Okay, so I've got some new instructions for the lethal that I decided to add on for customers. I've been working with the prop now for quite a while. In fact, I'm still using the prototype, so I've probably done it longer than anybody. And you know, you learn a few things as you go along, and eventually it just got to be enough tips that I decided to make a new video. So, first of all, the knife, when you're holding your coat like this, you'll probably notice that the elastic bunches up and the knife hangs out the bottom of your coat. You don't want anybody to see that, obviously. So one little thing you can do is put the knife inside the coat pocket, like so, when you're not wearing the coat. And for that matter, if you use the coat in a show where you're not doing the trick, you can leave the knife in there instead of putting it in your sleeve. And then when you're ready to actually put on the coat, you can just put it down in the sleeve and you're ready to go. See, it hangs out now and I'm holding it like that. Another thing I should point out, the fur on the front of the board, this is kind of self-explanatory and probably obvious, but you should rub your hand on the fur before the show against the grain, which fluffs up the fur and makes it harder to see the slot, you know, where the knife comes out. But that's kind of obvious. But anyway, here's another little trick. This is something that Bobby thought of, actually. Instead of going into your table to get the knife out of your sleeve, you just pretend it's in your back pocket. So all you do is just reach back with both hands, pull it out of your sleeve and come out with it like that, and you actually say, I've got the knife in my back pocket, that sort of thing. Now, throwing the knife, this is the most important tip that I decided to put on here. We talked about a few different ways of doing it on the video, but I think this is the best way of all. I'm going to show you exactly how I do it in my show. Now I'm standing closer to the board just to make sure I'm in camera range. Normally I'd be farther away for performance. But here's how I do it. I hold up the knife like this, and I'll say 1, 2, 3. Now notice how the timing is there. And by the way, of course they're told to throw the cards up at the moment I say 3. So I'm bringing up the knife a couple times, so if anybody's looking, they see the knife. I'll just get it out here again. They see the knife in my hand. It occurred to me that, well, if you try and throw like this and let go, as you know, the knife will just go down like that and won't go up your sleeve. It occurred to me that your arm is in motion really fast. Nobody's going to notice if you don't even have the knife in your hand. So at the moment I come down and say, see, I say 1 and then I bring it up, 2, 3, and then on 3 here, I let go of the knife. And now I watch and I make sure that they're throwing the cards up in the air, and I've got my finger on the button at the same time, of course. I say 3 and I let go of the knife and I wait. It doesn't take very long, but in case they don't throw them up, I don't want the knife coming out of the board, obviously. So as soon as I say 3, as soon as I see them starting to throw up the cards, I bring my arm up as if I had the knife and I immediately do this. And the same time I'm making the throwing motion is when I push the button, not before, not after. Just remember that both hands do work at the same time. The exact same time you're doing this motion, you're pushing and holding the button down. And that's another point I wanted to mention. Some people had a bit of trouble because they didn't realize you have to hold the button down at least for a second. I had one guy say to me, sometimes I have to push the button twice in order for the knife to come out. He thought there was something wrong. Turns out he was just stabbing the button really quick for like half a second. Most of the time it wasn't long enough. The servo needs to move far enough to release the knife. So push and hold it until the knife comes out. Just remember that. So again, the timing is throwing is exactly the same time I push the button, and the timing will look perfect. It'll look like there's about a second delay while the knife is flying across the air. In this case, I was probably a little bit too close, you know, to the board than I would be for a performance. One other thing, one person had a problem that the card was falling off all the time and he couldn't figure out why. And I finally determined there was nothing wrong with the prop, but when he was putting the card on the knife, he wasn't ripping the card far enough. The tear should go at least 2/3 across the card when you put it on. Just practice and learn to get it on there in such a way. It doesn't have to be dead center. In this case, it is almost dead center. The knife probably is dead center and it still works fine. But he must have been putting it, you know, where the card was only just barely on the knife like that, and the momentum of the knife coming out was making the card fall off sometimes. I've never had it happen. It just doesn't fall off as long as you put it on all the way like that. You actually have to give it a pretty good pull to get it off. And also do make sure that when you take it off, it looks like you're ripping the card off the knife, so give it a good yank like that. There's one more tip that I just remembered. that I thought of also. I've often thought about an out, what to do if for some reason the knife doesn't come out of the board. It's never happened to me, but suppose the battery's almost dead. I mean, I always check it before the show, obviously. And suppose the battery's just almost dead and then it dies and the knife doesn't come out or something. I don't think that's possible because, to tell you the truth, I think it dies slowly, and you would notice before the show if it's sluggish and just barely moves, you know, and you would change it. But just in case for some reason it doesn't come out, suppose you forget to turn on the switch, the knife's not going to come out. So you have to have an out. So what would you do? What I would do is I would say, you didn't really think I was going to throw the knife, did you? No, of course, I would never do that. That's ridiculous. What I actually did was I made the knife disappear. And your card also disappeared. It's not here among all these cards on the floor. You've been holding this box the entire time. Now you call it a box, right? And you take it back from them, and you open the back without letting people see inside as much as possible. And you say, look, inside this box is your signed card, and you'll see that it's torn because the knife went through it. Now, okay, it's not the greatest trick in the world, but it's better than nothing for an ending. And no one will ever know the difference. And it's actually still a pretty decent trick because their signed card somehow ends up inside the box. So, you know, better than some tricks I've seen. But at least it's an ending you have. So, there you go.